And so it began with just this mandate of giving a small amount of money. And more I find that the way we look at business is very practical. If today I come to you and we say you have this incredible idea for a video game series that's going to be a blockbuster on the internet, or I come to you and say I've got a great app, or I come to you and say I've got this great product, I'm sure a lot of people in this room will be happy to come on that journey and invest. If I say that I want money for something philanthropic, there is this innate thing of absolute displeasure to meet you, and you somehow feel I'm being cheated. I have to give money for something and I'm not getting anything back. And I think that culture has to change. Our basic ethics of giving. We only give to the temple, we only bribe God, we only want to give to things that give us a profit. But I think what the Americans understood a long time ago was that giving to, in a broader sense, to the arts particularly, brings with it such an enormous profit in terms of brand, in terms of legacy, in terms of building international relations, in terms of being something which is global. And no amount of marketing advertising can do that consistently over time.
Let me come in here, Feroze, for 1 second. There is this notion also of giving, say, Kumbh Melas in these kinds of massive charity kinds of organizations, which are not profit oriented. Why is it that in art there is this resistance? It's not just visual art, it would be there even for literature or something. Is there a resistance because there isn't enough knowledge? There isn't enough acceptance, people don't get it.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just an ethical thing. I think we've grown up with religion being our point of giving. And in most religions, except perhaps the Jews, we were not allowed to make interest. Interest is a bad word on anything, on any kind of monies. And the Jews were the only ones who were allowed to lend money and interest. And you see where they are today, well, yeah, in a completely different way. So I think it's just a matter of how we've grown up in that ethical value that this is kind of an economic sort of charity against the profit of sinning, or the sinning of getting profits. So it's just our way. But I think a lot of us know this. It's not unknown. I think a lot of people watch people like Kiran Nadar do what she's doing, which is extraordinary, to actually go out and say this is for the public. And that kind of giving, there is definitely an awareness. I think it's just a matter of coming together and feeling that you're not small enough. We all think it's too little. We have too little. And I think that is the key. We can do this in a more collaborative manner, and then it's not little at all.
We will talk very soon about the kind of work you've been doing, extraordinary work you've done to push Kochi Biennial, the way you've worked into the Venice situation where India has not been represented, but you were the sole funder the last time around. But let me bring Nitin in at this point. Nitin, how did you get money for your first work of art at the age of 15?
I got it from my dad.
That's so glad I inherited another one. Yeah.
Just to come back to what Feroze said, and also what you said. So, very interestingly about John D. Rockefeller for a second. His lawyers at one point in the late 19th century told him that the amount of money that you're making through this monopolistic business that you're doing is so vast that you and your family will drown in the amount of money, because you can't possibly spend anything close to what you're making. The Rockefellers were not like the Vanderbilts. The Vanderbilts were extravagant and they had big mansions and so on and so forth. When they sat down and sort of decided what they could do with this money, the only thing that they could think of doing without bringing guilt on themselves was to have museums and donate and buy art. And it's if you go to New York now, it's also the ballet, it's the Museum of Modern Art, it's the Asia Society. Later on, one of the brothers went to collect Asian art, somebody collected Chinese, somebody collected modern, somebody collected something else. So very different, but that spurred a sort of motivation amongst all the other people like that, the Fritz, the Carnegies, the Mellons, etc. But that also came with guilt, because what they were doing at that point in time was really flexing their muscles and making money in a different kind of way, which today would be considered completely illegal. When you have some, when you have someone like Kiran, the first thing to know is that I think in the history of 20th and 21st century, when we take the names of all the collectors, so I'll go back to the early part of the 20th century, one of the first collectors was Feroze, who collected miniature paintings. Their collection then got sold to the Lal Bhais at some point in time, I think in the 40s. You had individuals like N.C. Mehta, who was on the board of the Birlas. He made a fabulous collection. Anyone has been to the Eddie Museum in Ahmedabad. And then you have Mr. B.K. Birla himself, who's got a vast collection. So going down after that. But you don't have a single woman. And I think Kiran in the whole thing is the only woman who has really built up a collection with her own mind, with her own vision, and I think that is something really extraordinary.
Nitin, I want to ask you about the fact that the collector, like yourself, like Kiran, and of course Feroze, are people who really do stick their necks out. You tend to go against the grain. You tend to perhaps set a precedent. I remember about 15 years ago in your home seeing the most beautiful Kalpita scenes. This was long before, this was long before the big boom, etc. But those were invaluable Kalpita scenes. I remember even before that, your collection of the sketchbooks of Himacha. That is, Himacha probably even today isn't adequately appreciated. What is it in the eye of the collector whereby he is able to anticipate, put his money, it's like an uncertain stock perhaps, you're not quite sure which way the market is going to go. What is your opinion?
So I think my initiation into art was very much through artists. When I started collecting, there were some books that I couldn't understand because they were so difficult to read. Of course, there was no auction, there was no market, there was one or two dealers in the city, and dealers were one way of buying art, but you would go to the artist's house and you could buy what you wanted. So the first thing was, who are the good artists to buy, firstly, because nobody knew in prices, right now we confuse many times high price with good quality, and that's not necessarily so. So is Tayyab a better artist than, I don't know, Souza? I don't know. So people think, that if the price is high, then the artist is actually better. So that time the prices were almost similar or low, higher, etc. Apart from Hussain, who was already successful. So with the initiation, having spent time with artists, visiting their studios, so on and so forth, and the fact that I didn't have any resources, I was a student, I was just interested, and I didn't have any funds, So one would try to buy the things that were, in a sense, undervalued at the time. So when I asked an artist friend of mine, I said that, I really like Manjeet Baba's work, and, he said, yes, he's a fantastic artist. And I said, I like Kalpita Singh's work also. And then I asked Manjeet, how much is your painting for? And he said, I took back 100 rupees or whatever it was, not 100, but 50,000, I can't remember the figure. And then I asked her, how much is yours for? And she said, 5,000, for example. So I said, listen, they're same or similar in caliber, they're about the same generation. So why don't I buy a Kalpita instead of Manjeet? So today, after 20, 25 years, 15 years, all that evened out. But that's how my collection was made. So Himacha, I know it sounds really strange. I went to visit him in his study studio. It was extremely cold, and he hadn't sold some. He didn't have a right way of communicating with people. He wasn't somebody who would go to diplomatic cocktail parties and sell himself and so on and so forth. So he really didn't have a market as such. And I came back home and I told my mom, I said, this is a wonderful artist, and I saw his works, and he doesn't even have a proper blanket. So she took out a duvet and she said, why don't you go back and you give this to him so at least he can sleep. It was really, and it just seems like yesterday, but things have changed so dramatically, since then. So I'm not saying, I'm not romanticizing that artists were, poor and things like that, but there was some artists. So he showed me some work, and he said, I showed them to so many people. I made them in 1962 when I came back from France, and to me they are the most important work. I I asked other artists and I said, what do you think of this work? Because I'm still young, and they said it's a fantastic body of work. And then, I played over many months, and I continued to buy it.
Yeah, this is the very important relationship aspect. Kiran, what do you feel about acquiring work now? It's gone into auctions, it's gone into mega gallery structures, which used to never be there. Galleries used to be small, they were intimate, there were very few collectors. I think Delhi had 2 galleries up till the late 80s, early 90s. Bombay had about 4. So now the structures are extremely well organized. How do you feel about when you have to acquire work? Do you think this is an impediment, or is it better? Things are more transparent, prices are more well accessible, works provenance, or where do they come from? That's well known. How do you feel about these things?
I think it's a mixture of good and bad. I think earlier collectors who started way earlier had access to artists at ground level. They grew with the artists. They became true patrons of the artists in a way. I mean, if you look at a collector like Mr. Al-Qazi, I think he's a he was a true patron of art. He patronized artists, he supported them, and yet he built one of the most phenomenal collections of a private collector that exists in India with auction houses, better defined galleries. It's also a good thing because there is transparency. Undoubtedly, the provenance of work is well defined. When one buys at auction, one knows what one is getting. By and large, then the chance of it is very minimal. But one pays a huge price today as opposed to the prices you were able to get at an earlier stage of time. So, yeah, it's an instrument. I have never been collecting for appreciation of what I'm going to gain out of the art. That was not the primary sense. So, I think the collection is growing at a reasonable pace, and hopefully it will be a legacy left in.
Do you have a measure? I will not go before this period. Do you have a sort of a template for yourself that I'm going to look at everything from 1920 onwards or 1940s onwards? I'm not going to buy anybody who's only 21 years old because God knows if he's still there after 2045. Do you have any of these self-imposed sort of?
No, I don't have any self-imposed ideas or guidelines that I will buy out only in this specific fashion. Yes, as it started sort of Ravi Verma upward, and but I'm also now looking at it to a certain extent, and I find it very fascinating. Maybe a little more about them. But as far as the depth, also the depth artists are concerned, it's totally instinctive. Some knowledge, but by and large instinct, because one doesn't know how anyone is going to do. But instinctively, if I really appreciate the work, then I would buy it irrespective of the age of the artist.
Feroze, I'm going to ask you this question which has nothing to do with galleries, auctions, etc. because your practice doesn't seem to address any of those. But it involves two sums of money. The amount of money required for India's representation at the Venice Biennial. Your Gujral Foundation, I should mention here, is supporting the unofficial India-Pakistan pavilion at the next Venice Biennial. It's a very bold and daring step because we can hardly have any India-Pakistan shows in India or in Pakistan. It seems to be an impossibility. I was curating a show for Tina Ambani and her Harmony Art Foundation when Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, the musician, the Pakistani musician, got arrested carrying some $40,000 or something. The Pakistani laws changed overnight. Now anybody with artist on his passport had to have a stamp from the Interior Ministry. So we had this entire exhibition coming from Pakistan which stopped in the Pakistani customs. These kinds of things happen. If you are doing this, this is extraordinary. But I do want to put to you that one of the conditions around art is the enormous expense. Everybody's sort of gingerly not asking Kiran what it must cost to run 2 museums, to make this fabulous investment, to run an institution that is completely free, all the public programming is free. So I wanted to ask you that when you push into this domain of pioneers, etc., when you have global representation, which you feel so passionately about, what about the resources? How does it happen?
That's a very important. I think that's a very important question because honestly, I'm only 3 or 4 years old in this field, and I'm not a great collector like either of you or Kiran. I think one had the good fortune of inheriting from prolific artists in-house, so I don't actually spend a lot of money buying art. And to me, I grew up vastly in Europe, and Europe, well, in Paris, and so I had hundreds of museums, literally. I mean, London is 240. So you grew up with a different way of looking at art, and for me, it's always public. I did not really think or concentrate that you had to own it. It was just the enjoyment of actually going and seeing something over and over again, and marking a spot in different ways, different friendships, different relationships. And over time, when you were sad, what did you do? You rushed into a museum and sat crying upon it. You were happy. You did something else, but they were public spaces. So for me, I come from that angle of really not the collector. I do buy art, but randomly and more with heart and less with the money. But raising money for the arts is a daunting thing, which is why I began with the business of levels, to actually say, how do we get people together? I have Roshni sitting here, who's my friend in this great effort. She also runs PICA, which is philanthropic and again for the arts, young artists. And I think that many of us, including Kiran, including Nitin, who does a lot quietly, is to actually look at it not in such a daunting manner. So yes, it's a staggering amount of money, but I don't see it as that. I just see this incredible dream and this incredible thing in my head, and I hope to transfer that. And I find that the more and more people I speak to, they actually willing to be part of it. And not one person has said no. Now, it's not, one doesn't of course attack them with a huge amount of wanting, but it's about advice, it's about being a friend of the project, it's about lending a hand, it's about time, it's about expertise, it's about giving a small amount.
You want to talk a little bit about the Kochi project which you held with the loan of Aspirin Wall. I think some of you might know that there is a Kochi Biennial coming up. This is the second Kochi Biennial coming up in December. And you were very instrumental in loaning the most important premier space for the viewing of the artworks in Kochi. Please tell us a little about that.
I think that was what is December to March.
December
12.
I think that was again an example of how one could help without giving an enormous amount of money. I think they found us because I had originally bought the property many years ago, and then it went to one of our real estate-based companies, and then now it's a DIY property. But when they approached us, it was merely to say, can we have it? And at that time, I did not know much about what they were doing or anything. It was just, I went down, I met the artist, and I just said, why not? It's just to help. And I think it's things like this. Could be anything that you do have, even an intent. You could also just volunteer, and that's if you do want to work. So I think it's really just not to be daunted, because for a long time, I personally was also daunted by the arts, because it was just something, I just felt I needed a lot of money to be a philanthropist, or I need a lot of money to start a foundation, or I need a lot of money to do anything. You don't. You just have to have a great dream, and you have to be able to really believe it, and just do that long journey of pursuing. So I think I'm the fool on the table who's still pursuing and giving away money to the arts. But I love it, and I hope I can inspire some of you.
No, I think you're a very generous fool, and I can thank you because you supported our little initiative, our website on the arts. Gujral Foundation has supported us. Thank you, and I hope you'll find it worth your while. I have actually a question for Kiran and Nitin. When you have these repositories of art, you're obviously vendors. There must be people, Nitin, you could also answer this please. People must be wanting to borrow your works, etc. What is the interest in Indian art like, nationally, internationally? Who are the primary sources for you to borrow from? And Nitin, at some point you have to tell us that Atul Luria story on the shutters. That was really interesting, and please do share that.
I think initially, when India started to become a little bit more economically stronger, so why don't we see art, so much art from Bangladesh or Nepal? We don't see. So economic superiority in some sense does dictate the taste. So we had foreign museums around 2000 also wanting to, apart from the odd exhibition that had happened in Center Mountain in 86 or something in 75 or the Festival of India here or there. So we had one exhibition at the Tate Modern, and I think that was the first time internationally we were the largest lenders for that show that time. And all this lending is, it seems like it was very nice to lend the work, but it comes with lots of risks, especially when you lend out of India. So the works that came back in the monsoon, and they were in the docks in Bombay, and they were taken outside, and they were lying outside for an extended period of time. And one of the collectors called me up who had lent another work and said that, I just received my painting, it's completely emotionally. And we had photographs, we had these Atul Doria shutters, images on the screen when you look them around. And just to go back to that story, Atul Doria was a maybe not so young, but younger artist, very promising from Bombay. And he first time made this, these works which are rolling shutters with images outside and inside. And he had made this for the Tate specifically as a representation of Bombay. The exhibition was for Century Cities. It was about various cities in the world, and Bombay was one of them. And he made these works, and his father asked him, why are you spending so much money making these shutters? And it was expensive to make as compared to a canvas. So he said, I want to represent Bombay in the way things flows and the way the business happens, and there's a terror how people shut the thing and so forth. So his father and brother had worked out a deal with the person they bought these shutters from to say when they will come back from the exhibition, obviously they're not going to sell. So what is the value of the scrap of the shutter? We give these back to you. The exhibition was then shown in Bombay, and no one in their apartment. I mean, a shutter now looks pretty commonplace because we see it in homes even, and museums and so forth. But at that time it was relatively avant-garde in a sense. So nobody bought any more from the show. And then I went to Bombay and was in an industrial space in Srinagar, South Mount. And I don't know why. I didn't have the space. I just liked the work. I didn't have the space. I don't think I had the money. And I just said, okay, nobody's taking that day home. And, I ended up having them. I never put them up in my house because I didn't have a house to show them in. And I think they went for 12 or 14 museum exhibitions. Various ones went here and there. So we would just get a mail. They're now going to Oslo, now they're coming back, they're going here, they're coming back, they're going here, they're coming back. And finally, when I made a new house, I made a wall where I said I should put them up. And I did decide to put them up. And I didn't know how to install them, so I called up the art gallery and I said, I don't know how to install them. I have no idea what to do. So he know how to do shutters because he's made shutters since. And